Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this webinar today. I am so proud to be able to represent CPACharge at this year's MACPA event. We wish that we could be there with all of you in person at an in-person event, but, we're glad that everyone is staying safe, and we're so happy to be able to still participate, even if it is virtually in some way. And I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun and learn a lot of good stuff along the way. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting in person, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about me. My name is Amy Mann, and I am the Director of Creative Services here at CPACharge. If you're not familiar with CPACharge, we are a proud MACPA member benefit, and we are an online payment solution helping CPAs and accounting professionals accept client credit, debit, and ACH payments online. We're headquartered here in Austin, Texas, where the weather can't really decide if it wants to be summer or fall. We kind of every day go through about 2 to 3 seasons and about a 20-degree temperature swing. So because of that, I will apologize. I'm probably going to have to take a few breaks during this webinar to get some water because my allergies are catastrophic. So apologies in advance. If you hear me go silent for a second, I promise the audio hasn't cut out. I'm just taking a quick refresh of water. But my background is in education, which is why I love doing these kinds of webinars and these kinds of events. It really harkens back to my first profession before I got into professional services. It was in education. And so when I get to talk about something I really love and I'm really passionate about, I get super excited. So I really do want to just extend a heartfelt thank you to MACPA and also all of you for attending this webinar and giving me a chance to share a little bit with you today. This is really great. Finally, I'm a proud dog owner and lover. I have to put that on every slide in every presentation that I do. I have 3 rescue dogs at home. They are the loves of my life and absolute monsters. So I'm actually recording this in my office today where it's empty and silent. So you will not be hearing them chime in throughout the presentation today. So just know that they're at home probably eating my books or something. But for us today, we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about cybersecurity and cyber liability and what that means for professionals like you. Now, granted, we're going to be talking a lot about how cyber liability intersects with the payments industry, but I want to throw it out there right now that everything we're going to be talking about today is really applicable for just data security best practices, no matter what type of data or information you're dealing with. We're going to be talking about easy to implement best practices that every professional should have in their office. Because the reality is, we see headlines like this all the time with increasing frequency over the years. It feels like these types of breaches and cyber attacks are becoming, really commonplace in our interconnected digital world. And it used to be that some of the big retailers and big box stores were the ones that we were mostly hearing about when it came to data security and payment security breaches. I still remember the Target breach a few years ago, the Home Depot breach. They're getting these names almost like hurricanes getting named. But increasingly, hackers and would-be cyber criminals are going after individual professionals and their offices because if you really think about it, professional services providers are prime targets for data theft, primarily because the very nature of the job that you do requires the constant handling of sensitive and confidential information. And you can look here on the screen for a few, just glaringly obvious examples. From personal information and personally identifying information about your clients to their financial and tax details, all of these are kept in order for you to sufficiently and efficiently do your jobs. And it's not just CPAs. We're seeing this across the spectrum of professional services. Lawyers often have access to the same type of information. Medical professionals and family physicians' offices have a lot of this information on tap and are increasingly being seen as a path of least resistance to gain access to this type of information in order to exploit it. Now, obviously, with the loss of this kind of information, there's going to be an immediate and tangible loss, whether that is the loss of finances, if there's a bank breach or a financial breach. It could be the loss of physical information, especially if it's a physical loss. If somebody's taking physical files or physical data or physical objects out of your office, that's kind of the first type of loss that we're looking at. However, it really spirals out from there to a lot of other types of losses that can come from these breaches. One of the largest being a loss of reputation and trust. Being the victim of this type of attack really does shake confidence, and it shakes up the confidence of your clients, which can result in a lack of new clients coming into your business, or the exiting of existing clients, even those who might not have been directly affected by the breach. This in turn leads to a loss of competitive and economic advantage. And then finally, mitigating a breach like this and the loss of sensitive information, all of this really does, take a toll in terms of the amount of in-person work required for investigations, for auditing, for just kind of crisis management. And so this business disruption absolutely can't be overstated, as well as the accompanying liability that could come from such an investigation or an auditing process. So the stakes are high. Just to, we're kind of setting the stage for, there is a level of loss beyond just what is immediately stolen in a cybersecurity breach. These breaches do account for real financial devastation. In 2018, ransomware attacks cost businesses more than $8 billion. And a lot of this came through increasingly sophisticated phishing attacks, which are those really targeted either text messages or email attacks where someone is spoofing a person's name or email address or both, and attempting to get someone to engage with them in order to solicit financial assistance from them. So this could be the form of, somebody pretending to be a family member and asking for money for travel, or I've heard of people targeting elderly folks and asking them, saying like, I'm your grandkid and I'm in jail and I need bail money, can you help me? This can also take a lot more kind of less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less serious natures. And so I was targeted in a phishing attack about a year ago. I got an email from the CEO and founder of my company saying, hey, it was on a weekend, and the email just said, hey, is anybody online right now? I really need help with something. And it was just like short and sweet and to the point, and felt like something that she would send. And so I responded. I said, yeah, I'm online. What do you need? And she was like, oh, great. I need to buy some gift cards for some clients. And for some reason, I can't find my wallet. Do you think you could help me out? And I was just like, okay, hold up. I've been trained in this. I'm just gonna double check. So I texted her and I was like, hey, did you just email me about some gift cards? And she was like, no, but you are the third person who has reached out to me. And it was done in a very low-key way. It felt very organic. It was very conversational. So these types of attacks are getting more and more sophisticated and more commonplace. And so because of this, in 2018, the IRS came out and they issued a press release specifically speaking to accounting firms and saying, look, these types of attacks are on the rise. This is something you absolutely need to be cognizant of and take steps to educate yourself, educate your staff, so that you can keep your information and your clients' sensitive information safe and secure. And so I want to talk for a second about kind of the side of cyber liability that a lot of us don't often think about, and that's the threat of insider mischief and insider mistakes. Now, we are all imperfect human people, and we are capable of misplacing things, losing things, accidentally revealing information that we didn't mean to, sharing passwords for access to information. And most of the time, this isn't done maliciously. This isn't done with cruel intent. This isn't done, specifically to hurt someone else. It's just because we're not perfect. We're humans. We make mistakes. I cannot tell you how many cell phones I have set down, like in a bathroom, to wash my hands in a public space and then just walked out the door. Sometimes I get them back, sometimes I don't. But these types of mistakes happen. And so the threat of just well-intentioned insider mistakes is an absolute threat when it comes to cyber liability. It's not always, a hooded kind of Mr. Robot figure sitting behind a computer screen in a dark room somewhere trying to, penetrate your firewall to steal sensitive information. A lot of times losses and breaches come from honest to goodness mistakes and oversight. Additionally, this insider threat and in-house mischief is a component that also needs to be examined and addressed. Disgruntled employees who alter or erase or steal company data can be attributed to 1 in 5 attacks across the country. And it's a very real threat and can often be difficult to prevent, largely because people aren't thinking about it. People aren't trying to put barriers in place and try to prevent access to this stuff. So this is absolutely something that we're going to address in our presentation today as we talk about ways to protect your firm's sensitive data as well as the sensitive information of your clients. So we've laid the foundation, right? We've looked at the scary stuff. Hopefully we're all taking it seriously. What should we do? Should we shut down our emails and go back to just kind of cash under the mattresses? Obviously not. This is clearly, granted, I am a self-proclaimed catastrophizer. And so in my heart of hearts, I'm like, yeah, let's just shut it down. Let's just shut it all down and let's just go back to face-to-face communication and keep everything under lock and key, and then nothing can ever happen, right? Unfortunately, that is not pragmatic, that is not efficient, and that is not conducive to a growth-oriented business, because people expect to have digital virtual access 24/7, 365. And this was true in a pre-2020 and COVID-19 era, right? But now, even more so than, 9 months ago, the world is experiencing what it's like to be primarily contacted and connected through virtual means. We're doing this whole summit right now virtually because we have to, but what it's doing too is it's reinforcing patterns and availabilities and capabilities. And so a lot of people are realizing more so now than ever that digital communications and technology allows for levels of interconnectedness even when operating virtually that before they might not have taken the time to really explore or to provide to their clients. And again, even prior to 2020, this was on the rise. Companies like Netflix and Uber and Amazon have really shaped our processes and our minds to the point where we are growing increasingly accustomed to and expecting of every convenience when it comes to being able to run almost every facet of our lives from the phones in our hands. And so, pulling the ostrich move and sticking our heads in the sand and just being like, well, I'm not gonna risk this digital breach because I'm just not gonna engage with it. I feel like every minute that goes by, that is just becoming more and more off the table. It's less of an option. And especially if you're looking to, run a growth-oriented business, giving people convenience, meeting people where they are and on their terms, and providing them every opportunity to engage with you is really the level of convenience that people are looking for, which means we have to find ways to mitigate these cyber risks and provide people the flexibility that they're demanding while also ensuring their security. So thinking just specifically about payments, you know, again, people aren't backing off of digital payments and online payments. There are 183 million Americans with credit cards right now. And most of them have more than one, because you can see there's 1.27 billion with a B cards in use. In 2016, a TSIS study found that 81% of respondents identified credit and debit as their preferred payment method. And that was in 2016. And y'all, those numbers have not gone down in the last 4 years. They have only gone up. And people feel like it's safe, both for in-person and online payments. The majority of people feel that credit and debit are the safest way to pay. And more than 50% of people don't use or rarely carry checkbooks. So providing the convenience of online payments is essential. But so too is protecting that information. And again, I want to reiterate a point that I made at the beginning of this presentation. We're about to start talking about payment card industry data security standards, the PCI DSS. And this is a set of security standards that the major card brands set, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, those guys, in order to ensure that all companies that accept, process, store, or transmit credit card information do so in a secure environment and in a way that protects that information. And we're going to talk a lot about this in terms of credit cards, because those were the parameters around which these standards were set. But these are, again, best practices for data security in any form. It doesn't matter if we're talking about financial data. It doesn't matter if we're talking about personally identifiable information, or if we're talking about payment card information. What we're going to go through right now is best practices for data information security, full stop. And so regardless of what types of information you have in your office, this is going to be valuable for you to know and to keep in mind. We're going to start looking at this at a really high level. And then as we move forward, we're going to get into more and more specifics. So if we say something like, it's your responsibility to protect, you know, payment information no matter what, and you're like, great, Amy, what does that even mean? Don't worry, I promise we're going to get granular. But we want to start really high level. How do we mitigate our risk? What can we do in order to maintain data security and payment security? Well, PCI DSS gives us a really good outline for sort of the roadmap we can lay down when it comes to building a more secure office and a more secure solution for ourselves and for our clients. So these are the 6 main pillars of the PCI DSS. And these are the requirements for anybody that handles credit card or payment information in any way, shape, or form. So step 1, build and maintain a secure network. 2, protect cardholder data no matter what. 3, maintain a vulnerability management program. 4, implement strong access control measures. 5, regularly monitor and test your networks. And then finally, 6, maintain an information security policy. So what do these all mean? Let's start with number 1. Build and maintain a secure network. So a few ways that you can build and maintain a secure network in your office is to install and maintain a firewall configuration in order to protect cardholder data, or again, any type of sensitive data. This is going to keep prying eyes from outside of your office from being able to look in at your network and kind of poke around and see what's on the other side of the veil there. We're going to talk in coming slides a lot about passwords. We're going to talk about tools that exist for helping you manage your passwords, as well as layering extra levels of security on top of it. But kind of the big 3 things, you know, if you're just going for super easy takeaways when it comes to passwords, 1, don't use vendor supplied defaults. You make sure that you reset your passwords for absolutely every single thing that you get. If you get a new piece of hardware, reset the password. If you install new software, reset the password. If you sign up for a new service or system or solution, reset the password. Number 2, don't share passwords. I know that oftentimes there are financial expenses tied to this, and that the easiest way is to share a single account for something across multiple people. But just as much as is possible, don't do that. Get out of that habit. Sign up individual people for individual accounts on a system. And then number 3, when it comes to you personally, don't use the same password for everything that you use. Don't use the same password across websites. Don't use the same password across systems, across pieces of hardware. Come up with new, unique, strong passwords for everything you're using. And then finally, just a couple, working from home tips thrown out there, since a lot of us are working remotely or working from home these days. Try to not share your home network outside of your household. This is true if, maybe you've got a neighbor or you've got, friends who live nearby. If you're talking to people you can trust, people who what they're up to and what they're doing, sure. But if you're doing work on a public network or an open and shared network, that's really risky, right? Because even if it's somebody else's and you trust that person, you might not know who else is accessing that public or shared network. So make sure that everything is password protected and that password is only shared amongst people you trust, who you understand what they're doing, and that they're doing things safely if you're going to be putting your work hardware, your work software connected to that network. The second step in the PCI DSS is protect cardholder data no matter what. I love this because I feel like protect cardholder data no matter what sounds like super, I don't know, like Game of Thronesy. Like I can picture, Jon Snow with a broadsword protecting cardholder data, come what may, at all costs. But what this really means is be smart about where data is and how it's shared. Data is constantly in motion, and it's often in transit. And so you want to make sure that in all of its states, whether data is in motion, whether data is at rest, whether data is in the cloud, that it's being properly protected, and that it's being protected uniquely based on the state that it's in. So if you have physical data in your office, payment details, payment information, clients' social security numbers, financial information, you want to make sure that if you've got a physical manifestation of that it is kept secure under lock and key in a file cabinet, and not, a file cabinet that locks and the key is like dangling out of the lock, 90% of the time, or like hanging on a hook next to the desk where the file cabinet is. You need to make sure that it's really protected. If it's being stored online or stored on a computer or a hard drive, you want to make sure that those devices are encrypted. They are fully encrypted, so that in the event that somebody snatches that hard drive out of the office, or if you leave your laptop on a plane, you can't see, but I'm raising my hand because I did that one time. You want to make sure that those devices are encrypted, so that even if somebody grabs that laptop, they're not able to access the data on the other side of it. And then finally, be thoughtful about how you're transmitting data. If you need to share data digitally, make sure that you're using encrypted and secure communication channels. The too long don't read of that is stop emailing credit card information. Stop emailing social security numbers. You need to make sure that you're using secure communication channels if you need to transmit sensitive data from one place to another. And email just isn't that secure. So we need to get out of the habit of transmitting information that way. Number 3, maintain a vulnerability management program. This is the first of many times I'm going to say that cybersecurity is not a one and done thing. It's not that you can just put some things in place and then hit go and bing, bam, boom, you're secure for all time. You need to make sure that you're using and regularly updating certain tools and systems that have been put in place to keep information secure. So for example, antivirus software is a really good example of that, which needs to be constantly run. It needs to be updated. And then develop and maintain secure applications and systems. So we're going to look in a minute at what that looks like and how to do that in your office. Implement strong access control measures. All right, this is where we're going to start to get into mitigating some of that insider threat or that insider risk. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. there is a principle in cybersecurity called the principle of least privilege. And what that says is that the folks in your office should only have access to the systems and tools they need in order to do their jobs. You don't need to give everyone access to everything at the same level. So even within a particular software, you might have some folks that need admin level access to that information, whereas other people could very successfully do their jobs with just, read-only access to that information. So make sure that information is relegated to the people and at the levels that are appropriate for them to do their jobs. This is really going to cut down on a lot of risk for your company when it comes to protecting sensitive information. Again, assign a unique ID to each person in your office who has computer access. You want to be able not just to make sure that you're not at risk of passwords and things like that being hacked, but also in the event that something does happen and you kind of need to reverse engineer a sequence of events to figure out what happened where or what went wrong or what happened, you need that access information in order to be able to reverse engineer the process and to know who to talk to. And then again, restricting physical access to cardholder data and other things in your office. The more you can keep that securely protected, the better shape you're going to be in overall. So keeping financial details under lock and key, keeping the technology that runs your office in a locked cabinet, keeping your router that controls your network behind a locked cabinet, things like that. Remember that even though we are talking a lot about cybersecurity in the digital realm, there are still going to be physical items you need to back up in your office as well. Again, not a set it and forget it thing. You need to regularly monitor and test your networks to make sure that everything is working the way that you need it to work. Make sure that everything is updated and that there aren't new patches available, that there aren't new system updates available, that the systems that you're using are working together in the way that you expected them to. Whoop. And then finally, maintain an information security policy. This is a really great way to make sure everyone is on the same page with what these best practices are in the first place. Again, a lot of mistakes and a lot of damage comes from really well-intentioned misunderstandings or lack of insight or again, just errors. People don't know what they don't know. And so sharing an information security policy with everyone in your office is a really great first step just to help make sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to what are best practices around information security. What am I expected to do or not do from a data security standpoint in this office? And having such a policy is also now required as part of Form W-12, and we've got a little snippet of it here on the screen. This is the type of thing that from a liability standpoint, you might want to include with, maybe if you have a company handbook or something like that, that you ask people to read and verify, with a signature that they've seen it, that they understand it. This is a great thing to have on hand. It's also a really great vulnerability management program in the event that something does happen. Your information security policy can outline, okay, if this happens, here's who you need to contact. This is your first call. So rather than wasting time, like, who do I call about this? Do I just call my boss and have them escalate the situation? Or do I reach out to this person? Or this person knows a lot about computers. Should I just call her? It's a great way to kind of triage communications. If anything happens and it's kind of outside of someone's realm of comfort or expertise, it lets them know exactly what their responsibilities and expectations are so that you can move quickly to mitigate any damage that might result from that situation. All right, so those are our big 6. We've talked about what each of these kind of mean, but again, I really want this to be an informative and actionable presentation. So let's talk about kind of going one level deeper and saying like, okay, great, we know that we want to install, we don't want to use vendor supplied passwords. What does that mean? So let's talk about the nitty gritty of how you can set yourself up for success and really equip your office with everything you need to meet these best practices. And so step 1, if you're a list maker, you're going to love this. If you are not a list maker, you're going to hate this step. But the first thing you need to do is inventory your assets, right? Again, I just said a minute ago, we don't know what we don't know. And it's really hard to protect things that we haven't taken into account in our office. And the reality is that so much of our technology just supports us in the background that you're probably not thinking all the time about the very detailed systems and solutions that are powering your office. And so taking the time to sit down and document all of the cyber assets in your office, in your practice, who owns them, who uses them, who has access to them in the first place, is going to be a really important step in setting yourself up for success. You want to cover things like your network. How many networks do you have? Who connects to it and how do they connect to it? The physical computers and hardware that might be sitting around your office, software and data, and then all the way down into users and individual accounts to access this information. Your network is going to be a huge part of this, right? And you probably, especially in larger offices, are going to have multiple networks running and might have multiple of these options in place, right? You might have a staff Wi-Fi that most people use, but there are going to be certain people in the office who are wired into the network. So you want to be able to identify who and what systems are connected to which networks, who configured these, who's responsible for that configuration and keeping it updated. Is there a guest Wi-Fi? And if so, how do people access it and who has access to it? And then again, going another level down and looking at the software and data in your office. What applications are you using? And are these critical to business? And are they accessing any confidential or sensitive information? If so, do you have licenses for each copy of that application and who all has access to it and at what levels? Again, it's really easy to just set everybody up as an admin on every new piece of software. It certainly requires less work, but it's also infinitely riskier, and it's worth the time to note and really designate roles for people who need to access sensitive information. You want to detail what applications are responsible for, what information is managed within them, where that information is stored. Is it local to each individual computer? Is it a cloud-based application where data is stored there, or is it stored internally on a server or a network that you have in the office? And make sure that you include backups. Are you backing data up? And if so, where? Who has access to it? Is it internal in your office, or are you using something like Amazon Web Services to back that up? So make sure you detail all of this information. And then finally, like I mentioned, the individual users access. You want to make note of everyone who has accounts on your system. What privileges do they have, and are these privileges necessary? And just a quick tip, if you're in a situation right now where you're kind of hearing what I'm saying and you're like, ooh, yeah, you know what? Everybody in our office pretty much has access to everything, and maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we need to scale that back. I would recommend doing that. I think it's absolutely necessary. And two, I'd recommend making a plan so that you can do it all at once. And this is just, sharing from experience. If you start piecemeal taking people's access away from things or reducing the level of access they have to certain applications, people are a lot more likely to get defensive and to take it personally and to feel like it's reflective of either them or their job or their performance. Whereas if you do it all at once and just say, hey, y'all, we're kind of resetting things for, for cybersecurity purposes, this is a great time to roll out your information security policy to the company and just say, we're really going to adjust things. So you're probably going to see some stuff changing in the next few days. If you lose access to something that's absolutely critical to do your job, talk to this person, talk to this manager. And what you'll find is that people are all going to be going through some degree of this at the exact same time. And so it's going to feel less personal. It will feel more like a company shift is happening, and it's going to be a lot easier to swallow. I'm sure you'll get a little bit of pushback, but overall it'll be fine, rather than if you go application by application or person by person. That's going to start to feel a lot more targeted, and people are a lot more likely to bristle as a response to that. So just a little best practice for you to keep in mind when it comes to things like that. All right, so now that we've got our IT inventory, we're ready to start going into those tools, systems, accounts, applications, and doing something to actually strengthen them. So examples of strengthening these applications include replacing weak passwords, updating your Wi-Fi configurations and securing connections to them, and then finally ensuring that systems are up to date and less prone to viruses. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to make sure that your passwords are unique and strong for everything that someone might have to log into and access. This includes your networks, your Wi-Fi, email and other accounts, subscription-based solutions, common websites that are used by people in your office, or you might have some like outside agencies or systems that you use that somebody else manages that system entirely, but you log into it. Make sure that you're using safe and strong passwords for all of these, because one weak password could give a would-be cyber criminal access to just a treasure trove of information. So you want to view absolutely every single touch point as a way to reinforce security in your office. A really great way to do this is to enlist the help of a password manager. These tools have really evolved over the last decade. I don't know if anyone out there who's my age probably remembers the first gen of password managers. They came out, they were like a big clunky thing that looked kind of like a label maker almost, where they had like that QWERTY keyboard, and you could literally log into this external device with one password, and then you could keep a list of all of your different passwords. It was great for what it was at the time, but the good news is they have gotten way more sophisticated. Most of them are just digital tools that you can install on your computer or a site that you can log into and that follow you around. And what they do is they don't just store all of your passwords, they can generate strong, unique passphrases for every site you visit, everything you ever log into, and then store those. And all that's required of you is to remember a single unique master password. And once you can do that, the password manager will manage everything else for you and keep all of your systems protected. There are varying levels of these that exist out there. There are some that can operate uniquely on a single device. So maybe you want to go really strict access control for your work computer, but you're at home or on your phone, you don't want to deal with it. Cool, there's an app for that. Or maybe you want something that's like, it doesn't matter where I'm working, I want this thing to follow me. I want it to manage all of my passwords. And so it needs to work on my work computer and my personal computer and my phone and my spouse's computer. Great, they have those too. So there's a lot of solutions out there. I'd do a little research. If you need recommendations, feel free to email me. My email address will be at the end of this presentation, and I'd be happy to make some recommendations for you. But this is a great way to just really streamline password management and take the burden off of you. Additionally, some people will enlist the use of multi-factor authentication to lay an extra level of security on top of what they're doing. A lot of us are familiar with multi-factor authentication in certain situations. For example, if you've ever had to reset the password for a website or a solution that you use because you forgot it, you most likely have used MFA because you've been texted a one-time code or sent a one-time link that you can click to reset your password. That's great, but you can also use that same technology even if you don't need to update your password. If you remember what it is and just say, like, in order to access this website or in order to access this software, people are going to have a memorized password and then a one-time access code in order to log in. It's kind of the same thinking behind using a debit card or an ATM card, right? Something that requires a PIN. It requires a combination of something you have and something you know. And so when you put those two things together, it adds a layer of security that makes it really hard to hijack an account. But I really want to reinforce MFA isn't a silver bullet. So don't stop using strong passwords, even if you're using some form of multi-factor authentication. You still want to make sure you're coming to the table with super strong, unique passwords. Now moving on to fortifying your network. There are things you can do to significantly reduce the risk of access through your company's Wi-Fi. Number one, let your password manager set the Wi-Fi password. That's a huge one, right? Don't include common phrases or like the name of your company in your Wi-Fi password. That's going to be really easy to hack. So let your password manager generate a strong passphrase that's, some absolutely nonsensical combination of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, weird symbols on the computer. And that's going to set you up for a lot of success. Again, make sure that you're requiring network authentication. And you can do this when you're setting up your network by selecting the WPA2 personal, or sometimes it's just appearing as WPA2 PSK or WPA2. And this is kind of what that looks like in your router settings. You can select that from available authentication methods. So pairing network authentication requirements with a secure passphrase is a really great way to boost your network security. Additionally, if you have frequent visitors or guests to your office, consider using a separate guest Wi-Fi. Most Wi-Fi routers today will support one or more guest networks. You still want these to have a good password attached to them. You still want to make sure that you're enabling authentication for this network, but it's a great way to keep your absolutely most vulnerable information kind of isolated on an internal system only, while guests and visitors to your office can still access the internet, can still get online, but they're not connected to the same systems that house that sensitive information. And so to that point, you want to make sure that every office system, your printers, your file servers, all of that is connected to your private Wi-Fi network and not the guest Wi-Fi network. And I really appreciate what our team does here at CPACharge. I think they've got a great system in place. All of our internal computers that are, company provided are connected to the internal system, are connected to our internal server so that we can access the information we need to do our jobs. But we also have guest Wi-Fi. And so if you come to work, so I'm sitting here in the office with my work computer, which is connected to the internal system, and then I have my cell phone. And my cell phone is connected to the guest Wi-Fi. So even though I'm a staff member, even though I work here, not all of my devices need to be connected to that critical system. It's perfectly fine for my cell phone to be connected to the guest Wi-Fi because I don't need to access our file servers from my cell phone. So keep that information as secure and private as you can. And again, keeping your home office network private is also a good idea. Maybe, if you work on really sensitive stuff at your house and you've got, teenagers who are, I don't know what the kids do these days, Fortnite, they're playing their video games and they're doing the TikTok. You might want to consider keeping their network separate from your network. And so enabling a guest network on your Wi-Fi, and you don't have to call it guest network because, that's a little belittling to the family, but maybe you just say like, home entertainment and office or something like that. But separating those networks out is a good idea just to make sure that if you're VPNing into your office systems and accessing file servers remotely or sensitive information like that, you do want to take that extra step to make sure it's safe and secure, whether you're in your office or you're working from home. Protect your office systems. Now, this is one that was kind of a shocker to me when I first started reading about it, but a lot of damage is done through known vulnerabilities for which updates have already been released. And I'm not saying that, this specific example is responsible for it, but, as an example, we've all been in the situation where we go to start working and we go to log into our computer and we get, the pop-up that says, do you want to there's a new update for Microsoft Office. Do you want to do that now? And I'm like, no, Microsoft Office, I need to use Word literally this second to do my job. And I dismiss it and I say exit or something like that. Again, I'm not saying that Microsoft is like the source of hacks and stuff, but that's a good example for, all of the software we use is constantly being updated. It's constantly being patched. There are new things being pushed through. And a lot of times I just dismiss it because I view it as an inconvenience and not a potentially, really impactful cybersecurity solution. So an easy way to mitigate this, enable automatic updates. Just set it and forget it as much as you can and let it happen in the background. Don't give yourself the option to dismiss. Have these systems update automatically as soon as updates become available. Similarly, make sure that you're making use of installed antivirus and anti-malware software on all of your systems. You want to have this running in the background constantly, but then also enable full computer scans weekly at a time that's convenient for you. Maybe you've got a standing meeting with your boss and you know that you're not going to have your computer in front of you at that moment. Maybe there's a lunch that you go to every week or regularly, or a set lunchtime. Maybe you go home to let out a dog or something like that. Find these times when you know you don't need to be glued to your keyboard and schedule weekly scans of your computer so that it just happens. And again, you're not giving yourself the chance to not do it on that given day. You're going to want to enable your operating system's firewall in order to prevent external connections. Now, whether you're on a Mac or a PC, there are going to be built-in firewall solutions on your operating system. You just need to make sure that they're enabled. Make sure that sensitive data is encrypted at all stages. Again, you can find data at rest, in motion, in the cloud. So make sure that wherever it is, it's secure. And so if you're using, if you're online, if you're on the internet, make sure that the web addresses that you visit start with HTTPS and that they are secure sites that you're visiting. If you go to a website and you get a pop-up that says, the security certificate for this website has expired, are you sure you want to proceed? Say no, get out of there. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And make sure for devices or for information at rest that you have whole drive encryption enabled on all of your devices, for your cell phone, for your computer. Do this for your personal devices too. Forget, this is stuff that you need to make sure, should you lose it, should you forget it, should it get stolen, that the information on the other side of it is protected and that you're insulated from the peering eyes of would-be cyber criminals. This is one that I love. Don't handle unnecessary sensitive information, and handle might be a little bit too strong of a word, but the reality is you are going to have to interact with sensitive information to do your job. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of what you do. It's the nature of what I do. I can't avoid it working in payments. Now, just because I have to interact with it and use it doesn't mean I have to store it. Doesn't mean I have to be the one to protect it and keep it safe and secure. There are trusted vendors out there with way more cybersecurity knowledge than any of us have, that have protections and levels of security in place that I don't even understand. And this is across the board for anything you might need to do when it comes to data storage, when it comes to communication, when it comes to payments. This is the type of thing that, with the proliferation of cloud-based services, you can store this information externally with someone who has way more cybersecurity knowledge than you, and then you reap the benefits of being able to access it literally anytime, anywhere. It's not tied to a physical device that you have to protect. It's not tied to a single system where your ability to use it is predicated upon connection to that singular device. So as much as possible, find trusted vendors. Find people who are doing things at a level that you could never expect to, that I could never expect to, and trust them with this sensitive information. Make the responsibility of protecting it their primary responsibility. Your responsibility is to find someone you trust, to find someone that is able to protect it at that level. So vet your sources, vet the vendors that you might work with. Any vendor who has access to your network or any of your confidential data needs to have a clear privacy policy, and they should be able to prove their cybersecurity chops to you. So don't be afraid to ask for their privacy policy. Keep a version of that on file for yourself. And really, just as much as possible, remove that liability, remove that risk, get it out of your office and put it into someone else's hands. So just a few, final thoughts before we go. A connected world creates so many opportunities. It creates opportunities for collaboration, for communication, for connectedness, but also for breaches. And the reality is that the way that our world is changing and the trends and consumer expectations for information, for communication, for online payments, these aren't going anywhere. In fact, we're only going to become increasingly connected through digital means. And so taking data security seriously, coming up with solutions for monitoring and protecting information is absolutely essential. today we've gone over a lot of things that you can do in your office and in your time in order to do this, but also find trusted vendors who can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, that you can develop a lasting, strong partnership with, so that you know that your information and your client's information is protected and secure. And so with that, I just want to again issue a very heartfelt thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and inviting us to be a part of this event. Again, I wish we were doing this in person and that we could be, going back and forth, asking questions, having a blast. I'm hopeful that that's what next year will bring. But for now, thank you so much for joining me here virtually. My email address is on the screen. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, if you need recommendations for software, for vendors, for anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to keep talking to all of you. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful event. I hope you are safe. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season coming up. And I hope more than anything to talk to you very soon. Thank you so much.